Ambassador Jiho Kim looked out at the vast stars through the transport ship window as they approached the massive Galactic Council station. 3 years of careful planning had led to this moment. In his secure briefcase lay humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy: complete medical technology that could heal any wound and extend life for all species. He believed this would finally earn humans a place among the great civilizations of the galaxy. The Council Station was bigger than any human city. It spun slowly in space around the neutral world of Kepler 442b like a giant metal flower with 12 petals. Each petal belonged to one of the member species. The center held the great council chambers where decisions were made that affected billions of lives across thousands of worlds. Jiho had spent months preparing for this day. He knew the history of each species and their customs. He had learned their languages and studied their art. More importantly, he understood their fears and what they valued most. Humans had been trying to join the council for 3 years, but each time they were told to wait and prove themselves worthy. The docking process took an hour as security scanned every molecule of his ship. Council protocols were strict about contamination from unknown worlds. Jiho did not mind the delays. He knew that once the council saw what humanity could offer, they would welcome Earth with open arms. 2 alien escorts met him at the airlock. The first was a tall, blue-skinned Viridian with 4 arms who moved with liquid grace. The second was a stocky Chronite whose rocky skin looked like living stone. Both wore the formal robes of council diplomats and carried energy weapons that hummed softly at their sides. They led him through corridors lined with crystals that changed color as they passed. The walls themselves seemed alive and responded to the presence of different species. Jiho had read about this technology, but seeing it made him realize how advanced these civilizations truly were. Earth had much to learn from them. Other beings walked the halls going about their daily business. Jiho saw merchants from the gas giant moons of Altair trading with insect-like creatures whose names he could not pronounce. Energy beings that looked like living light floated past without making a sound. Every few minutes he spotted new species he had never seen in any human database. The council chambers took his breath away. The room was a perfect sphere with no visible floor or ceiling. Gravity worked differently here, allowing delegates to sit on any surface they chose. 12 throne-like seats were arranged in a complex pattern that somehow let each species maintain their preferred environment. Some areas were filled with methane gas, while others contained pure energy fields. High Arbiter Vexthul occupied the central position. The reptilian leader was 7 feet tall with scales that shifted from deep green to silver depending on the light. His eyes were ancient and calculating as they fixed on the human ambassador. Around him sat representatives from 11 other species, each more alien than the last. Jiho took his place in the center of the chamber on a simple human chair that had been provided for him. The contrast was clear. He was the outsider asking for acceptance. The chamber fell silent as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. Some showed curiosity, while others displayed barely hidden contempt. He began his presentation with confidence, speaking clearly about humanity's achievements and potential contributions. Earth had developed faster than light travel in just 50 years after first contact. Human medicine had eliminated most diseases and extended average lifespans to over 150 years. Their engineering had created cities that floated in the clouds and underwater colonies that thrived in the deepest oceans. But the real prize was the regenerative technology. Jiho activated a holographic display showing how human nanites could repair damaged tissue at the cellular level. A severed limb could be regrown in weeks. A damaged brain could be restored to perfect function. Even the aging process could be slowed or reversed entirely. The aliens watched with interest, but Jiho noticed something troubling in their expressions. Instead of excitement or gratitude, he saw calculation and suspicion. Several delegates exchanged glances that seemed to carry hidden meanings. The insectoid Chancellor Yith Ara clicked her mandibles in what might have been amusement or threat. When Jiho finished his presentation, the chamber remained silent for long moments. Finally, High Arbiter Vexthul spoke in a voice like grinding stone. His words were polite but carried an undertone that made Jiho's skin crawl. The Arbiter explained that the Council would need time to consider humanity's application. There were concerns about compatibility and questions about human intentions. The galaxy had seen too many species claim peaceful purposes, only to reveal conquest as their true goal. Surely Jiho could understand the need for caution. But then, Chancellor Yith-Ara rose from her seat. Her compound eyes glittered as she spoke of contamination protocols and biological threats. She pointed at Jiho's briefcase with one of her 6 arms and declared that the medical samples he carried posed an unacceptable risk to Council worlds. Jiho protested that the nanites were completely safe. Human testing had proven their effectiveness over decades of use. He offered to submit to any testing they required and provide complete technical specifications. The technology was being freely given with no strings attached. His protests fell on deaf ears. The vote was swift and unanimous. 12 species declared the human ambassador guilty of carrying biological weapons with intent to contaminate Council space. The penalty under their laws was immediate execution by ceremonial fire. Security drones emerged from hidden panels in the walls. They moved with mechanical precision to surround Jiho before he could react. Energy fields wrapped around, his body holding him motionless as the terrible truth became clear. This had been planned from the beginning. Jiho managed to activate his emergency communicator as the drones lifted him from his chair. His final transmission to Earth was cut short, but carried enough emotion to break hearts across human space. Admiral Park would know what happened here. Admiral Park would understand what this meant. They carried him to a chamber filled with representatives from all 12 species. A ceremonial pyre had been prepared in the center, with restraints designed to hold him while the flames did their work. The aliens took their seats in a circle around the fire like spectators at an entertainment. High Arbiter Vexthul spoke ritual words about purification and protection from contamination. Chancellor Yithara activated recording devices to broadcast the execution across known space. They wanted every species to see what happened to those who threatened the Council's authority. The flames were not kind. They burned slowly and deliberately designed to cause maximum suffering rather than quick death. Jiho's screams echoed through the chamber as his gifts to the galaxy turned to ash beside him. The aliens watched without emotion, as if observing a scientific experiment. As consciousness faded, Jiho understood the terrible mistake humanity had made. They had believed in diplomacy and peaceful cooperation. They had assumed other species shared human values of progress and mutual benefit. They had offered their greatest treasures to civilizations that saw kindness as weakness. The broadcast reached Earth within hours, carried by quantum communication networks to every human colony and ship. Billions of people watched their ambassador burn while alien leaders observed with satisfaction. The message was clear. Humanity would never be accepted as equals in this galaxy. But the aliens had made an error that would cost them everything. They had shown humans exactly what they thought of peace and diplomacy. They had revealed their true nature while believing they were demonstrating strength. Most importantly, they had given humanity a reason to stop pretending to be civilized. The emergency klaxons wailed through Earth Defense Command as Admiral Minho Park rushed into the main operations center. His officers stood in stunned silence around the massive holographic display that showed the Council chamber broadcast. The image of Ambassador Jiho Kim, burning alive, played on endless repeat, while alien faces watched with cold satisfaction. Park felt something break inside his chest as he watched his friend die. Jiho had been more than a diplomat. He was a dreamer, who believed that different species could work together for the common good. He had spent 3 years crafting the perfect peace offering only to be murdered for his efforts. The screams that echoed from the speakers would haunt Park for the rest of his life. Dr. Hana Lee collapsed into a chair as tears streamed down her face. She had worked alongside Jiho to develop the medical technology that was supposed to save lives across the galaxy. Her nanites could have healed billions of beings and ended suffering on countless worlds. Instead, they had become the excuse for this execution. Colonel Dong Yun stood rigid at attention, but his hands shook with barely controlled rage. He had trained the security team that was supposed to protect Jiho during the diplomatic mission. The ambassador had insisted on going alone to show trust and peaceful intentions. Now that decision seemed like naive stupidity that had cost them everything. Director Soman Kang of Human Intelligence arrived with a folder full of intercepted alien communications. Her face was pale, but her voice remained steady as she delivered the devastating truth. The Council had never intended to accept humanity into their ranks. Every diplomatic mission and peace gesture had been carefully monitored and analyzed as intelligence-gathering operations. The aliens had studied human psychology and behavior for 3 years. They knew about Earth's military capabilities and technological achievements. They understood human values and weaknesses better than humans understood themselves. The execution was not a response to contamination fears. It was a carefully planned demonstration designed to crush human morale. Park listened to the intelligence briefing with growing horror. Intercepted messages revealed that the Council viewed humanity as a potential threat that needed to be eliminated before it became too powerful. Human expansion into space was proceeding too quickly for alien comfort. Human technology was advancing at rates that worried established civilizations. The regenerative nanites had particularly frightened the Council leadership. If humans could extend their lifespans indefinitely, they might become impossible to control through normal diplomatic pressure. A species that did not fear death would be unpredictable and dangerous. Better to destroy them now, while they were still weak and trusting. Other intercepted communications showed the true scope of alien preparation for war against humanity. Council fleets were already moving toward human space under the cover of routine patrol missions. Trade agreements were being canceled and supply lines cut. Economic pressure was being applied to human colonies that depended on alien technology and resources. The Council believed they could strangle humanity slowly, through economic warfare and isolation. They expected humans to surrender within months, when faced with the overwhelming power of 12 united civilizations. The execution of Jiho was meant to demoralize Earth into accepting alien terms without a fight. Park felt the transformation, beginning as he processed this information. The man who had spent decades building humanity's reputation as peaceful explorers was dying just as surely as Jiho had died in that fire. Something darker was taking his place, something that the galaxy had never seen before. He dismissed the junior officers and called for a private meeting with his senior staff. The small conference room felt cramped as the most powerful humans in the military gathered around a simple table. These were people who had known Park for years, but they barely recognized the man who now sat before them. His voice was quiet, but carried a weight that made seasoned veterans uncomfortable. Park spoke of the fundamental error that humanity had made in dealing with alien civilizations. They had projected human values onto species that did not share them. They had assumed that intelligence automatically led to compassion and wisdom. The truth was far more disturbing. Intelligence without empathy created perfect predators. The Council species had evolved beyond the tribal conflicts that still shaped human nature, but they had also evolved beyond the cooperation and sacrifice that made humanity strong. They saw other species as resources to be managed rather than equals to be respected. Park outlined the choice that now faced humanity. They could accept alien dominance and spend the rest of their existence as vassals to species that saw them as barely sentient animals. They could retreat to Earth and hope that isolation would protect them from further alien attention. Or they could show the galaxy what 3 billion years of evolution on a death world had created. Dr. Hana Lee spoke first through tears that had turned from grief to rage. Her medical nanites could be reprogrammed into weapons that would make alien nightmares seem pleasant. She had spent her career healing people, but now she wanted to hurt the beings who had murdered her friend and colleague. Colonel Yoon offered the full resources of Special Operations Command. His soldiers were trained for missions that other species would consider impossible. They could strike anywhere in the galaxy and vanish before enemy forces could respond. Give him targets, and they would disappear in ways that would terrify the Council. Director Kang revealed that human intelligence had been preparing for this possibility since first contact. Sleeper agents were already in place throughout Council. Space. Communication networks had been infiltrated and security systems compromised. When the order came, they could cripple alien civilization from within. But it was Admiral Park who provided the strategic framework that would transform human anger into alien nightmare. He had studied every war in human history, from ancient tribal conflicts to modern space battles. He understood something that peaceful species had forgotten. the difference between fighting and warfare. The Council expected humans to fight like civilized beings with rules and limitations and concern for civilian casualties. They anticipated formal declarations of war and pitched battles between military forces. They believed that superior numbers and technology would guarantee their victory in any conventional conflict. They were wrong on every level. Humans did not fight like other species because humans were not like other species. 3 billion years of surviving on a world that tried to kill everything that lived on it had created something unique in the galaxy. Humans were apex predators who had learned to cooperate in ways that made them unstoppable. Park activated the holographic display and showed his staff the real human defense fleet. The 300 ships that the Council knew about were just the visible portion of humanity's military power. Hidden shipyards in asteroid belts and dark matter clouds had been building vessels that did not appear on any official registry. More importantly, every human civilian ship could be converted to military use within hours. Cargo haulers became troop transports. Passenger liners became hospital ships. Mining vessels became stealth raiders equipped with weapons that aliens had never imagined. The entire human merchant fleet was a military asset waiting to be activated. The transformation of Earth's military had begun the moment Jiho's screams reached human space. Across thousands of worlds and stations, humans were abandoning the pretense of civilization that had lasted for 3 years. They were remembering what their species had been before they reached for the stars. Pack hunters who worked together to bring down prey much larger than themselves. Tool users who turned everything around them into weapons. Persistence predators who never stopped chasing their targets, no matter how far they ran. Survivors who adapted to any environment and overcame any obstacle through sheer determination. Parks. Final orders went out simultaneously to every human military installation and civilian authority. Operation Fury protocols were now in effect. The gloves were off. Humanity was going to war not as civilized beings seeking justice, but as the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever produced. The aliens had wanted to see what humans were really like when cornered and threatened. They had burned one human, alive thinking it would terrify the rest into submission. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping since humanity first looked up at the stars and dreamed of peace. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth was the only world in known space where apex predators had evolved intelligence and why that combination was the most terrifying force in the universe. Captain Taewon Choi checked his equipment one final time as the stealth ship approached the Council mining station in the Rigel system. 72 hours had passed since Ambassador Jiho's execution and humanity's response was about to begin. His team of 12 soldiers represented the finest warriors Earth had ever produced, but today they were not acting as soldiers at all. Today they were apex predators hunting alien prey. The mining station orbited a dead world rich in rare metals that powered Council technology. 3,000 alien workers extracted materials that built their ships and cities. The facility was lightly defended because no species had ever been foolish enough to attack Council property. That was about to change in ways the aliens could not imagine. Taewon's ship approached through the asteroid field using gravitational shadows to hide from sensors. His pilot was Kyung-soo, who had learned to fly by racing through Earth's most dangerous storm systems. Moving between spinning rocks while avoiding detection was simple compared to navigating hurricane winds at supersonic speeds. The team wore armor that absorbed energy signatures and reflected sensor beams. Their weapons were designed for efficiency, rather than spectacle. No energy dischargers that lit up the darkness or explosive rounds that announced their presence. Just simple projectile weapons that killed silently and left no trace of their origin. Intelligence provided by Director Kang showed exactly where to strike for maximum psychological impact. The administration center held civilian managers who coordinated mining operations. The security station contained armed guards who protected Council interests. The communication array linked the facility to the greater alien network. Taewon divided his team into 3 groups with specific instructions for each target. Kill everyone who carried weapons. Leave alive everyone who did not fight back. Make sure the survivors understood exactly what had happened and why. Most importantly, make certain they could spread word of human capabilities to the rest of the galaxy. The assault began at Oro 300 station time when most aliens were sleeping. Taewon's group hit the security station first, using shaped charges to breach the outer wall in complete silence. The guards inside never had time to draw weapons before projectile rounds ended their lives. Sergeant Ji-won Lim led the second team against the communication array. Her soldiers moved like ghosts through maintenance tunnels that were too small for most alien species. When they emerged inside the communications center, the night shift operators found death waiting for them with human faces. Corporal Sunho Bae took the third team to the administration center where civilian managers lived in comfortable quarters. These aliens had never seen combat and panicked when armed humans appeared in their bedrooms. Some tried to run while others attempted to hide, but Bae's soldiers were methodical in their search. Within 30 minutes, the station was under complete human control. Every armed alien was dead, and every civilian was gathered in the main assembly area under guard. The survivors included representatives from 6 different council species, each more terrified than the last. Taewon addressed them in perfect galactic standard, while his soldiers maintained overwatch positions. His words were calm and reasonable, as if discussing routine business rather than the aftermath of a massacre. He explained that this was humanity's response to the murder of their ambassador. The aliens learned that humans did not follow council rules of warfare. There would be no formal declarations or negotiated settlements. There would be no mercy for armed opponents or protection for civilian populations. Council space was now a hunting ground where humans would kill anyone who threatened them. More importantly, they learned that this was just the beginning. Human forces were already moving against targets throughout the galaxy. Every council facility would be hit by similar raids until the aliens understood the price of murdering human diplomats. Taewon gave the survivors detailed instructions about what to tell their superiors. They were to explain exactly how humans had penetrated station security and eliminated resistance without taking casualties. They were to describe the weapons and tactics used so that council military analysts could appreciate the threat they now faced. Most importantly, they were to deliver a personal message from Admiral Park to High Arbiter Vex Thule. Humanity remembered every alien face that had watched Ji-ho burn. Each council leader who had voted for the execution was now marked for death. No distance would be too far, and no security would be sufficient to protect them from human vengeance. The raid team departed as silently as they had arrived, leaving behind a scene that would haunt alien nightmares for generations. The mining station continued to operate under survivor management, but its production dropped by 80% as workers fled in terror of human return. News of the attack reached council space within hours through the same communication networks that had carried Ji-ho's execution. Alien leaders who had felt secure in their superiority suddenly realized they were vulnerable in ways they had never considered. Similar raids occurred simultaneously across 12 star systems. Human strike teams hit council facilities with surgical precision while avoiding civilian targets that might generate sympathy. Supply depots vanished overnight. Communication relays went silent. Military outposts found their garrisons slaughtered, while administrative staff were left alive to report what had happened. But the real masterpiece came from Dr. Hana Lee, working in her laboratory deep beneath Earth's surface. She had spent 3 days without sleep reprogramming the medical nanites that were supposed to heal the galaxy. Her gentle nature had been replaced by something cold and calculating that terrified her own research assistants. The nanites were designed to repair damaged tissue, but Hana had reversed their programming to create something far more insidious. Instead of healing, they would cause rapid and uncontrolled growth in plant life. A single nanite could transform an entire ecosystem within weeks. Hana called her creation the Genesis Plague because it created new life rather than destroying existing organisms. The nanites would cause crops to grow beyond all biological limits, choking out other plants and destroying agricultural balance. Food webs would collapse from the bottom up as herbivores starved and predators followed them into extinction. The weapon was deployed through stealth ships that approached Council agricultural worlds during their night cycles. Microscopic dispensers released nanites into water supplies and soil deposits where they would remain dormant for days before activating. By the time symptoms appeared, human ships would be light years away. The first reports came from the Altarian grain worlds that fed billions of aliens across the galaxy. Wheat fields began growing at impossible rates, reaching heights of 30 feet, before collapsing under their own weight. Root systems penetrated so deeply they cracked planetary bedrock. Entire continents became choked wastelands of dying vegetation. Council. Agricultural experts had no explanation for the phenomenon. The affected plants showed no signs of disease or parasitic infection. They simply grew until they exhausted soil nutrients and water supplies, then died, leaving behind barren landscapes that could not support any life. Similar reports arrived from agricultural worlds throughout Council space. Food production dropped by 60% within the first month as entire ecosystems collapsed. Famine spread through alien populations that had never known hunger. Panic buying emptied stores and drove prices beyond what ordinary citizens could afford. High Arbiter Vex Thul called emergency sessions of the Council, but had no answers to offer. His military advisors could not explain how humans had struck so many targets simultaneously with so few ships. His scientists could not identify the cause of agricultural failures or develop countermeasures. General Crexmore of the Council Defense Force demanded permission to launch immediate strikes against human space. His fleet of 10,000 ships could overwhelm Earth's defenses and end this threat before it spread further. The reptilian commander had spent his career fighting conventional wars against civilized opponents. But Director Soman's intelligence network had anticipated this response. Human agents embedded throughout Council space fed false information about fleet movements and military preparations. Communication intercepts were altered to create confusion about targets and timing. Most importantly, key military leaders began receiving very personal threats about their families and private lives. General Crexmore learned that humans knew where his children attended school and what routes his mate used for daily travel. Admiral Thaisura discovered that her private residence on the Outer Rim had been under surveillance for months. Commander Zorthek found evidence that human agents had been living next door to his family compound. The psychological warfare was as devastating as the physical attacks. Council leaders who had felt secure in their positions suddenly realized they were being watched by predators who knew everything about their personal lives. Sleep became impossible when every shadow might hide a human assassin. Within weeks, the mighty Galactic Council was paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. Their agricultural worlds were dying while their military forces jumped at shadows. Trade networks collapsed as merchant ships refused to travel through space that might contain human raiders. The surrender ceremony took place exactly 1 year after Ambassador Jiho Kim had burned alive in the same chamber. High Arbiter Vex Thul could barely stand as the virus destroyed his body from within, but human medical technology kept him conscious, enough to experience every moment of his civilization's death. Admiral Minho Park entered the council chambers wearing a simple dress uniform that somehow seemed more intimidating than any alien ceremonial armor. Behind him walked the surviving members of Earth's diplomatic corps, including Dr. Hana Lee and Director Soman Kang. Their faces showed no mercy or satisfaction, only the cold efficiency of predators who had completed a successful hunt. The once mighty council had been reduced to broken remnants of what they had been. Representatives from 12 species knelt in positions of surrender, while human soldiers maintained watchful positions around the chamber. The aliens who had observed Jiho's execution with satisfaction now trembled in terror of what their victims had become. Park approached the central podium where Vex Thul waited. The reptilian scales had fallen away in patches, revealing raw flesh beneath. His breathing was labored as organ failure advanced, but his eyes remained focused on the human admiral who had orchestrated his species' destruction. The transformation in Park was complete. Where once stood a diplomatic military officer now existed, something that made alien leaders flinch to look upon. His voice carried the authority of absolute power when he began to speak. Every word was measured and deliberate like a judge delivering final sentence. He reminded the assembled aliens of their crime against humanity. They had murdered an ambassador who came in peace bearing gifts that could have benefited all species. They had broadcast his execution as entertainment for their own amusement. They had revealed their true nature as predators who saw mercy as weakness. But they had made a critical error in their understanding of human psychology. They had assumed that killing one human would terrify the rest into submission. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping since humanity first reached for the stars. the apex predator that had evolved on a world that tried to kill everything living on it. Dr. Hana Lee stepped forward carrying a small case containing vials of antidote to the viruses ravaging alien populations. Her gentle nature had been replaced by something clinical and calculating that made her former colleagues uncomfortable. She explained the terms under which the cures would be distributed. Every council leader who had voted for Jiho's execution would stand trial before human tribunals. They would confess their crimes in detail and accept whatever punishment human justice deemed appropriate. Their governments would be restructured under human oversight with all military forces disbanded and weapons surrendered. More importantly, every alien child would be taught the true history of this conflict. They would learn that their leaders had chosen war over peace, and that human mercy was the only thing standing between their species and extinction. Future generations would understand that crossing humanity meant facing predators unlike anything else in the galaxy. Director Somin presented each alien representative with detailed files documenting their crimes and the evidence that would be used against them. Her intelligence network had penetrated every level of council society and possessed proof of corruption, conspiracy, and war crimes going back decades. The aliens discovered that humans had been watching them much longer than anyone had realized. Every diplomatic meeting had been monitored. Every private conversation had been recorded. Every secret deal and hidden alliance was documented in files that would be used to reshape galactic civilization. Captain Taewon Choi supervised the installation of human monitoring stations throughout former council space. His soldiers would not occupy alien worlds, but they would observe everything that happened. Any attempt to rebuild military forces or threaten human interests would result in immediate and overwhelming retaliation. The monitoring technology was far beyond anything the Council had possessed. Human sensors could detect individual conversations on planetary surfaces from orbit. Computer systems could analyze billions of communications simultaneously and identify potential threats before they developed. Privacy, as the aliens had known it, was now extinct. Admiral Park activated a holographic display showing the current state of galactic civilization. Red indicators marked worlds still suffering from human attacks, while green lights showed areas where relief efforts had begun. The message was clear: human mercy was conditional on alien cooperation. The statistics were sobering for any alien leader capable of understanding them. 300 human ships had brought the greatest civilization in galactic history to its knees. 12 species with populations in the trillions had been defeated by creatures they had dismissed as barely sentient primitives. Food production across former council space remained at 20% of pre-war levels. Medical facilities were overwhelmed by patients suffering from human-designed viruses. Economic systems had collapsed as trade networks lay in ruins. Billions of beings depended on human charity for basic survival. But the psychological damage was even more profound than the physical destruction. Alien species that had considered themselves the masters of the galaxy now lived in constant fear of creatures they could not understand or predict. The night sky that had once promised adventure and discovery now threatened death from human ships. The ceremony concluded with the lighting of a memorial flame for Ambassador Jiho Kim. Each alien leader was required to add fuel to the fire while acknowledging their role in creating the monster that humanity had become. Their participation was recorded and broadcast across known space. Vex Thul was the last to approach the flame. His clawed hands shook as he added synthetic logs to the memorial fire. The irony was not lost on anyone present. The aliens who had burned a human alive were now honoring his memory under threat of their own extinction. As the flame grew higher, Park delivered his final statement to the assembled representatives. They had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power and submission. They had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. They had taught humans that the galaxy respected only strength and that mercy was seen as weakness by species that called themselves civilized. The lesson had been learned and would never be forgotten. Humanity would never again offer friendship to aliens who saw kindness as vulnerability. They would never trust species that interpreted peaceful gestures as signs of weakness. Most importantly, they would never allow another human to die while alien leaders watched with satisfaction. The galaxy now belonged to humanity not through conquest, but through the simple recognition of reality. Humans were apex predators who had evolved intelligence on a world where only the strongest survived. They had spent millions of years learning to cooperate in ways that made them unstoppable when threatened. The aliens filed out under human guard, carrying with them the knowledge that their civilization existed only at human pleasure. Any future aggression against Earth or its colonies would result in complete extermination rather than the measured response they had just experienced. High Arbiter Vex Thul remained behind as the chamber emptied. His failing body made movement difficult, but he managed to approach Admiral Park one final time. The question he asked revealed the depths of alien incomprehension about what they had unleashed. Park's answer was delivered with the calm certainty of absolute power. The aliens would learn to live in a galaxy where humans set the rules and enforce them with whatever methods were necessary. They would teach their children to be grateful for human mercy and never to mistake human kindness for human weakness. But, most importantly, they would remember Ambassador Jiho Kim and understand that his death had transformed humanity from peaceful explorers into the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever known. Every alien species would spend the rest of their existence ensuring they never gave humans reason to demonstrate that lesson again. The memorial flame burned through the night, casting dancing shadows on walls that had witnessed the birth of a new galactic order. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through military might, but had redefined what it meant to be the dominant species through the simple application of intelligence and determination. The galaxy would never be the same, because it now contained creatures who understood that sometimes the only way to preserve civilization was to show the barbarians what real savagery looked like when wielded by minds that had evolved to survive anything the universe could create.